Hi, my name is Jennifer Gengler, and I am a Morningside graduate student and a teacher at the Sioux City Community School District. Title of my paper is The Effect of Implementing Online Learning with Algebra Students. The problem is that students at all grade levels are showing concern with a low level of mathematical understanding. Another problem is that many scores are non-proficient on standardized tests and district assessments. Only 26% of 12th grade students are graduating with a strong foundation in mathematical concepts, according to the National Assessment of Educational Process. High importance are put on achievement scores, and the emphasis on a student achievement scores can affect grade promotion, teacher evaluations, and school funding. Also, technology integration in mathematics is lower in comparison with other fields of study. So the reason I chose my topic was that our school became one-to-one and issued computers to every student. Also, its fast educational trend is online learning. I wanted to see if this was going to benefit the students in my mathematics classroom. According to the research, implementing technology does increase student engagement and helps to motivate students. There are 606 students in a study in an advanced algebra course that use an online resource called SimCalc for independent work. The students using the online technology showed positive results in engagement. The positive results were shown not only with student engagement, but also student success in their learning outcomes. Online formative assessments give students instant access to their current level of understanding. The research does show that learning is improved by providing formative assessment activities. Using technology is a way to give formative assessment, and it also aids in teachers modifying their instruction, as modifying instruction can help meet the needs of learners based on the data. Low skills lead to failure. Low performing math students in high school can be retained in the grade, have higher stress, and also have low grades and GPAs. 21% of students leave the primary school with insufficient grade level skills in mathematics. My students are all freshmen in algebra who are in a low income school setting. Freshman year is an indicator, according to research, of dropping out of school. In Philadelphia, 1996-97 school year, 57% of their students were retained in the ninth grade, dropped out of school. Identifying and intervening with low-performing students in math is important in minimizing lifelong struggles in daily routines and employment. The impact of the problem. Students with low math scores and mathematical understanding will find it harder to find a job and retain a job, especially students if they do not graduate from high school. Also, the effect for poor math skills is greater than the effect of poor literacy skills compared to success in adulthood. In the past, education has shown increases in students' problem-solving skills and higher-order thinking skills. These skills lead to increased student achievement. Technology used for online teaching produces advantages for students and teachers. It allows for an increase in flexibility and gives students more control with their education and their learning. Technology is the forefront in getting students to change their attitudes about school. If technology is appropriately integrated, it can enhance student engagement and it can lead to higher levels of learning. There is a gap, however, in the research to identify the relationship between math and technology, with a focus on ninth grade regular algebra students and the achievement score on regular algebra measures. The theoretical framework behind this study is both the e-learning theory and the dual coding theory. The e-learning theory is a cognitive principle that explains how electronic technology for education can support effective learning. Multimedia technologies are used to strengthen the quality of learning. While the dual coding theory says information is learned if delivered both visually and verbally, which is present when using technology and the online learning resources that were used with the experimental group. The purpose of this study was to investigate the relationship between the use of technology in the ninth grade algebra class and the scores that were given or measured by the algebra content analysis. The ACA was developed by Project AAIMS research team. This research may help our district math team provide resources that help all students, especially struggling students who are at risk of failing. As a teacher, I can monitor students' progress on the ACA measures, which will indicate a student's progress in algebra, and provide remediation for students who are not making adequate yearly progress throughout the year. The results of the study may be used to help make informed decisions on lesson plans and interventions that are needed moving forward in algebra. My work as an educator will be impacted by when and how I implement this technology into my classroom based on the results. The participants in my study were ninth grade students in algebra class from a low-income school in the Midwest. The participants were 52 students, 25 of those in the experimental group, 27 in the control group. 40% of the students were females, while 60% were males. 15% of the students had IEPs, while only 6% of those students had a math goal. The research done was a quantitative design used to compare two groups, the control group, which received traditional teaching methods, and the experimental group, which incorporated online learning into the curriculum. The materials used were different. For the experimental group, they used their HP laptop computers. They also used a learning management system called Canvas, which is supported by our school district. And they also used the online textbook called Big Ideas Learning and the resources that were provided with that textbook. They included videos, online quizzes that had instant feedback, discussion sections, and the dynamic classroom. While the control group, the teacher did use the interactive dual board to provide notes. It was all notes, paper, and teacher-led, a very traditional way to deliver the material. The experiment was conducted in 90-minute blocks. Both groups had the 90-minute block every other day. They received the same standards on the same days, just in the different delivery formats. The ACA 1 was given as a pre and the post test. Those tests were timed 7 minutes. They also only had 16 questions. These tests that were created have a reliability of a mean score of 0.76 and a very strong validity on the ACA of R equaling 0.79. This study was conducted in a 10-week period of time. The pre-test at the beginning and the post-test at the end of those 10 weeks. The scores were analyzed using the independent sample t-test. It was used to see if there was statistical significance in the post-test scores. The hypothesis of the study. It was predicted that freshman algebra students who have online learning embedded within the curriculum will demonstrate higher scores on the ACA measures than those that do not have online learning embedded in their curriculum. As you can see in the table, the results do not confirm the hypothesis, with P being 0.422 and not less than 0.05, which shows student scores do not indicate they are a direct correlation to the technology integration. The experimental group did score 10% higher on the post-test. However, this statistically cannot be ruled out by chance. Looking at the results on the table, the pre-test and the post-test results of the two groups are shown. The mean score on the pre-test is very similar, only 2% different. We're looking at the post-test, the experimental group did score 10% higher, which was equaled 1.44 points higher on average in that experimental group. Both groups did show an increase from the pre-test to the post-test, with the experimental group showing 10% increase higher than the control group. In the experimental group, 68% of the students did increase their scores from the pre to the post, while the control group, only 56% of those students increased their scores. However, the increase in the experimental group was not enough to demonstrate that the intervention could be verified as the cause for the increased scores as measured by the t-test. The implications for students was the poor attitudes. Many students were not excited to use online resources for learning, as this was something that had not been expected in the past. Students were also not familiar with online programs, and it did take time for them to learn how to navigate and to use the tools and to gain the confidence in this type of expectation. Another implication is 21st century skills. These skills have been known to show high importance for student success in the real world. As for educators, there are many new strategies that can be implemented with technology that support the 21st century skills. Also, students that are absent can still receive the same amount of information outside of class compared to a traditional classroom where they would have to be present in their seat to get that information. It is also great for teachers in the place of their absence. They could use online technologies and resources to deliver the instruction that day in their place. Also, the data analysis is a big piece for educators, as online resources give data analysis on students' assignments, on different checkpoints, which could steer lesson plans towards the greatest need for our students. There are some limitations to the study. The familiarity. Students had not been exposed to independent learning, and the navigation of the online resources may have caused some students to have higher anxieties, therefore performing lower on the ACA measures. Also, the timing. With only being 10 weeks, it was maybe too short of a time. And also, the timing of those 10 weeks happened at the beginning of the school year, where I was not familiar with the students, and the students were not as familiar with me or with the high school in general. Also, the time of day. The experimental group had their course during second block, which was the beginning of the day, and the last period of the day that was the control group who received the traditional methods. So that could have had an effect on the scores as the end of the day compared to the beginning of the day. The participants as well were only 13 to 15 years old, which there is a maturity there to engage in independent learning tasks and tough for their age to avoid distractions of the computer. Also, the percentage of students who completed both the pre and the post test, accuracy is very important, and only 75% of the kids in the experimental group were able to take both the pre and the post test, whereas 85% of those students in the control group took both the pre and the post test. And the gender differences, they were not even, where 40% were female and 60% were male students, taking no consideration for learning style differences between genders. Another limitation to the study would be access to the internet. Some have no access at home to complete their assignments, to look at the tutorials, which is not fair and equitable learning environment for all students. This could cause students anxiety or to rush through assignments. Also, recommendations. I would recommend having a larger group of participants. Whereas 52 isn't as small as it could be, I would recommend having multiple classes and maybe even multiple teachers. I would also try to even out the male and the female students. I would also do a longer period of time, as 10 weeks and the semester should be taken into consideration, as I would probably extend mine for the length of an entire school year, or even better yet, continue that research into 10th grade with their Algebra 2 students and loop with those kids. Also, the no time limit on the ACA measure. Why have a 7-minute time limit for students to show what they know? It might take some students longer, and also time limits can cause students to have anxieties about taking those tests. And the ACA measure itself also had new material on there. So I would like to have the students take those ACAs more often and more frequently, so for them to get used to it and to track their progress. Student attitudes. Does negative attitudes affect their effort? I would like to check out the correlation between homework completion with the experimental and the control group and see if that attitudes of students have any difference. Conclusions about the study. The experimental group used multimedia technology for learning and supports both the e-learning and the dual coding theory. The results showed slight increases for the experimental group, but not a significant increase, which doesn't completely support the theories in this study. Also, the results of the present study do not confirm the hypothesis, predicting that algebra students who have online learning embedded in the curriculum will demonstrate higher scores on the ACA measures versus the students receiving traditional teaching methods. Many studies provided in the Lit Review showed positive increases for technology, but the independent t-test indicates the increases are not or could be due to chance and not a direct correlation to the technology.